The sky had that greasy post-battle look again, charred clouds drifting over the burnt-out husks of dropships like lazy vultures with indigestion. Sergeant Miles Harrow squinted upward, sighed, and adjusted the busted visor of his helmet. The HUD flickered, glitched, then died entirely. He gave it a helpful smack. "Perfect," he muttered. "Just me, my rifle, and early-onset cataracts." The field was quiet now. Not peace and daisies quiet, more like the suspicious kind of silence where something either already exploded or was about to. Rubble stretched in all directions, the cracked remnants of the Lorthari perimeter station curling in on themselves like giant metal petals, wilted in some cosmic fire. The war hadn't technically ended, but everyone had stopped keeping score weeks ago. And Miles? He was babysitting a dead zone. Again. "Recon patrol, Harrow. Just a sweep," Command had said. "Check for stragglers. Tag anything breathing. Don't get attached." Right. Because the last time he got attached to something, it was a vending machine with a personality disorder, and it still owed him chips. His boots crunched across scorched gravel, and his breath echoed inside the helmet like an old man wheezing into a megaphone. He passed the melted remains of a transport droid, its arms curled protectively over a crate labeled medical. Now probably just full of burnt hope. Then something cut through the static of his comms. Not a mechanical ping, not gunfire, but a wail. He froze. It came again, higher this time. Desperate, not human. "Fantastic," he whispered. "Either I'm losing it or some poor alien's being murdered by a very determined goose." He followed the sound, boots careful now, navigating between fractured walls and the skeletal ribs of fallen antennas. A collapsed wall parted just enough to reveal a sheltered corner, a pocket of semi-safety, and there she was. An alien woman crouched, clutching a squirming bundle in her arms. Her skin was pale blue, streaked with soot and something darker, drying in flaking rivulets. Her armor was battle-worn but still intact, albeit patched with what looked like duct tape and vengeance. But it was the ears that stood out, long, curved, and trembling with the crying. They twitched with every screech from the infant. The baby, if it could be called that, was small, round, vaguely humanoid, and currently screaming like its lungs were trying to apply for their own separate citizenship. Miles raised both hands slowly. "Whoa there, friendly." "Well, relatively. That is, not a weapon." He patted his chest like a lost tourist introducing himself to a wild animal. "Miles, Harrow, Sergeant, Infantry, lover of quiet." The woman snarled something sharp and foreign. His translator buzzed in protest, coughed once, and declared, "Statement, fall back or your legs become soup." He blinked. "All right, aggressive. Got it. Just, your kid is loud. Like, war crime levels of loud." She shifted, backing against the wall, rocking the infant with desperate, jerky motions. It screamed louder. The comm static squealed in his ear. Every soldier within a mile would hear it. Okay, don't stab me. Let me try something," he said, stepping forward slightly, hands still raised. "I have a very particular set of skills. They mostly involve disappointing my commanding officer, but I've also babysat my sister's twins. Once, I survived. Mostly." She glared at him, eyes narrow, lip curled, but didn't stop him. That was as good as consent in Miles' book. He crouched slowly and took off his helmet. The crying hit him like a sonic boom. "Oh, good Lord. That sound should be classified. No offense." He rifled through his side pouch. No toys, no milk, no hope. He pulled out a ration pack. "You think the kid likes banana flavor?" The woman didn't answer. "Neither do I. Nobody does. That's why they give it to the infantry." He held it up. The baby smacked it out of his hand and wailed louder. Right. Clearly developing fine taste. Then out of instinct, out of some raw corner of memory untouched by years of battle fatigue, he started humming. Just a slow, low tune. Something old. His mom's lullaby, mangled by years of bad memory and worse singing. It came out rough, a bit off-key. The baby hiccuped, then blinked, then stopped. Silence. Miles stared at the tiny alien bundle like it had just recited Shakespeare. The woman looked at him like he had recited Shakespeare, and also proposed marriage. Her mouth opened slightly. Her ears twitched again, but not in anger, just confusion or awe. He leaned back on his heels. What did I tell you? Works every time. I also accept tips in the form of snacks, ammo, or not being stabbed. The woman didn't respond, just looked down at her now quiet child, then back up at him. Her features softened by a fraction, the universal measure of almost trust. He gave her a crooked smile. Now that we're on speaking terms, sort of, I'm guessing you're not part of the official surrender party. No response. That's fine, he added, sitting back against a nearby beam. Honestly, I'm not even sure if I'm supposed to be out here or just lost. Maps say this is Zone Epsilon 12. My feet say it's Zone, why are you like this, Harrow? The baby made a soft, warbling sound, not quite a laugh, more like a sigh. Miles exhaled too. His back ached. His head hurt. And yet, this was the most peaceful moment he'd had in months. I guess you've got a name, he said. Probably one I'll butcher, but I'll call you Jellybean until otherwise corrected. The woman stared at him, expression unreadable, then finally said one word, just one. Saren. He nodded. All right, Saren and Jellybean. Nice to meet you. I'm still Harrow and I'm probably going to regret not shooting you on sight later. But for now, let's just agree the kid gets to sleep and we don't shoot anyone until breakfast. She didn't smile, but she didn't argue either. And for now, that was enough. Saren didn't like human food. She made that exceedingly clear by sniffing the ration bar Miles offered, narrowing her eyes and handing it back like it was a live grenade soaked in sarcasm. I didn't cook it, Miles said, peeling back the wrapper with a dramatic flair. I just carry it. You can't blame the delivery guy when the pizza tastes like regret. Saren ignored him and pulled a narrow leaf from a pouch at her waist. It shimmered faintly, like it had stored moonlight. She crushed it between two fingers, rubbed the powder over her tongue, and offered a smug glance his way as if she'd just dined on fine wine and interstellar caviar. Miles chewed his bar with the solemn determination of a man eating cardboard to prove a point. The baby, now secured in a wrap of Saren's arm and part of a weatherproof scarf Miles had sacrificed from his kit, was mercifully asleep. They sat in the partial shade of a collapsed transport hull, heat rising off the metal in wavering lines. The breeze carried the distant hum of an orbital relay still functioning above them. Barely. It beeped erratically, like a drunk metronome. Miles stretched his legs and leaned against a rusted strut. So, Saren, that's a pretty name. Means anything fancy or just something like she who endures horrible company? Saren, whose patience was visibly thinner than the atmosphere at high orbit, said, It means stone that sings. Oh, so poetic. My name means, actually, I think my parents were just tired and liked the sound of it. No destiny, no symbolism, just vowel placement and maybe a coin toss. He expected silence, which was her usual contribution. Instead, she surprised him. In my language, your name sounds like a medicinal root that numbs pain. Crude, effective, leaves bad taste. Miles blinked. Wow. That's probably the nicest thing anyone said about me in years. Jellybean stirred slightly, emitting a hiccup that could have been either a sneeze or a threat. Miles glanced at the baby, then back at her. Is she always like this? I mean, the volume? Does she have settings or is it just siren and sleep? She senses what I feel, Saren said quietly. When I am afraid, she cries louder. When I lie, she wails. When I sing, she trailed off. When you sing what? Miles asked. Saren looked away. I have not sung in some time. He nodded, watching her gently stroke the child's fine hair, soft and dark, with an odd bluish sheen when the light hit just right. Maybe you should. Could give me a break. My vocal cords are unionized now. She didn't answer, but her fingers didn't stop. Later, when the sky darkened to a purplish hue and two moons blinked into view like the eyes of some indifferent god, Miles lit a small emergency fire cube. It flickered weakly, smelling faintly of copper and cloves. They sat across from each other, a beam of metal between them like a treaty neither was ready to sign. We can't stay here, he said. I know. You got somewhere to go? There is an old comm relay 10 clicks west. Abandoned. My people left an emergency capsule there. If it still exists. Miles tilted his head. West is that way, I think. Unless this moon is messing with my compass again. Last time it spun me in circles, and I ended up sleeping inside a ventilation pipe. Good. Then you will lead the way. Oh, wonderful. Because I look like a tracker. You look like someone who has survived despite himself. That will suffice. He stood with a groan. You know, if I didn't know better, I'd think that was a compliment. It was not. They walked the next morning under a pale dawn. Jellybean nestled quietly in the crook of Sarn's arms. Miles led with a scanner in one hand and his weapon in the other. Saren walked with purpose, but also the wary grace of someone expecting everything to go wrong at once, which in fairness was pretty standard on this side of the galaxy. 3 hours in, they stumbled on a junker droid, old Union make, left behind like a forgotten sock. Its head was half buried in dirt, one arm twitching in loops. It saw them and chirped, "Welcome to Broxo Gas and Refuel. Would you like to purchase a memory update?" Miles crouched, tapped its casing. "Hey buddy, you okay? I am legally obligated to inform you that I once served General Bell himself and am therefore a historical artifact. Please don't recycle me." Saren gave it a skeptical glance. "What is it?" "Greeter bot. Usually hangs out in fuel stations and public toilets. Weird cross-promotion strategy." The bot blinked its remaining eye. "Do you have the passphrase for discount napkins?" Miles sighed. "I do not. I am also 90% certain I don't want it." They left the droid humming the anthem of the old Union in D minor. By midday, they reached the cliff's edge, a sharp drop overlooking the scorched valley. Miles sat on a stone, removed his boot, and dumped out a handful of what looked like crushed insects. "Great. I've invented protein powder." Saren looked out over the horizon. Her ears twitched in a steady rhythm. "We are close." "You sure?" "There is a hum in the earth. My people designed the capsules to blend in. But they call to us. Low frequency. If I were younger, I would not hear it. I'm starting to feel like the baby in this trio. You've got super hearing. Jellybean has psychic crying. All I've got is plantar fasciitis and the inability to keep my mouth shut." "You speak often," she agreed. "It's a coping mechanism. Silence makes me think, and thinking leads to regret." They climbed down into the valley by late afternoon. Saren carried the child with one arm and used the other to brace herself along the rock face. Miles occasionally offered a hand, but she always ignored it, preferring to risk a fallover, accepting help from someone who hummed lullabies out of tune. At the base of the valley, hidden beneath twisted root vines and debris, was the capsule. It was small, barely the size of a freight container. Its metal was faded green, the color of forgotten moss, and a seal shimmered on the surface. One Saren pressed her hand too gently. It opened with a hiss and a groan. Inside, a depleted beacon, a ration crate covered in dust, a cracked water unit, and 2 folded cloaks. Saren stared at the beacon, then sat slowly, the weight of disappointment sinking into her bones. Miles stepped in beside her. "Looks like no cavalry. Sorry." She didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she said, "We are alone." Miles looked down at the baby, who reached for his nose and promptly sneezed on it. He sighed. "Well, if it helps. I'm extremely annoying and moderately well-armed. That's something." Saren almost smiled. Almost. Miles woke to a soft humming, low and lilting, coming from the corner of the capsule. It was Saren. She sang in her native tongue, the words round and flowing like a stream over stone. Jellybean blinked up at her, wide-eyed, completely still, caught in that quiet spell. Miles, still half-tangled in a foil emergency blanket and one boot on, stayed silent. He didn't want to break whatever moment he'd accidentally stumbled into by waking up at the wrong time. When Saren finished, the silence that followed felt fuller, like something sacred had been placed in it. "You can sing," Miles said, his voice groggy. "I told you I could," she replied. "No, you said nothing. I filled in the rest with hopeful imagination." Jellybean made a pleased gurgle and flopped against her chest. Miles stretched, grimaced, and sat up. Any chance that song has words about coffee? Or a functioning distress signal? Saren looked at the cracked beacon. The capsule was likely damaged in the withdrawal. No signal will get far. Right, so we're still off the grid, inside a war-scarred valley, with a baby who thinks sleep is for the weak. You ever wonder how we got here? I recall very clearly. Yeah, me too. I signed up for off-world patrol because the cafeteria on Earth ran out of those cream-filled snack cakes. Life choices. Saren stood. We cannot stay. If they sent recovery drones, they will scan for this capsule. You mean your people or mine? Yes. Miles packed quickly. He tucked what was left of the food into a pouch, resecured his sidearm, and handed her a water packet. She took it, hesitated, and said, "Thank you." He raised an eyebrow. Did you just say thank you? Is this a sign of heat stroke? I am practicing diplomacy. You should encourage it. They left the capsule and began heading northwest, where a ridge marked the edge of the dense atmosphere pocket. According to Miles' scanner, there was a minor Union outpost there, decommissioned, but its solar array might still function. An hour into the hike, Jellybean started crying again. Not the usual sharp squall, but a low, mournful wail. Saren stopped in her tracks. She senses someone, she said. Miles swung his rifle into position. Anyone friendly? She is not afraid, only curious. They pressed forward more slowly now. The terrain was broken by jagged rocks and the remains of ancient machinery. Giant wheels half buried, steel bones of walkers long obsolete. Then came the sound, faint at first, then unmistakable. Whirring, clicking, whistling. A repair drone, half the size of a person, rolled into view. It wore an old flag of the Earth Coalition like a cape, and one of its optical ports blinked lazily. It stopped, scanned them, and said, "You appear disheveled and underfed. Are you part of the theatrical reenactment unit?" Miles lowered his rifle. Yes, we are. I'm playing the rugged survivor. She's playing the competent alien warrior with an emotional arc. The baby is a natural. The drone chirped. Very realistic. May I offer bandages or sarcasm? Do you have both? It led them to the base of a buried outpost, a hatch covered in sand and vines. With a few buzzing motions and some enthusiastic beeping, the drone cleared the hatch and opened it. Below was a service tunnel, dimly lit by emergency lights still working after who knew how many years. Saren moved cautiously. The tunnel echoed with every step. Jellybean had gone quiet again. Miles whispered, I don't like quiet babies. They're planning something. Saren gave him a look. She is simply listening. There are sounds here you cannot hear. That makes two of you. I'm starting to feel like I was born without all the cool accessories. They reached a junction. The drone spun in a slow circle, then pointed one spindly arm toward a sealed door. Main console that way. The rest of the base is off limits due to mold, ghosts, and general disrepair. Miles approached the door, pressed his palm to the sensor. To his surprise, it accepted the input and hissed open. Inside was a small command room. Dust floated like snowflakes. A few of the systems flickered to life as they entered. One screen displayed a map of the region. Another blinked with a low-band transmitter interface. Miles set to work. I might be able to get a ping out. Nothing fancy, but it might reach a listening station. Saren scanned the room. This place was once a listening post. They would monitor planetary surface traffic. Perhaps some still remain in orbit. You know, for someone who started this week trying to kill me, you're surprisingly helpful. For someone who started this week singing poorly to children, you are surprisingly necessary. He grinned. I knew you liked me. I tolerate you. Progress. He powered up the transmitter. A low thrum filled the room. Saren rocked the baby gently. Jellybean's eyes fluttered. Miles tapped a few keys. There. Message sent. If anyone's out there, they'll hear us. Then the console crackled. A voice responded, not coalition, not alien. It was artificial. Cold. Unknown transmission source. Identify or be neutralized. Miles froze. Saren's ears twitched. That is not your side. Nope. That's someone else entirely. The drone rolled back in and immediately said, I regret to inform you that we may all be in grave danger. Would you like tea? Miles stared at the console. What kind of ancient threat answers distress beacons and threatens random survivors? Saren answered grimly. The kind that does not care who wins a war, only that it ends in silence. Jellybean started crying again. Not fear, warning. Miles backed away from the console, hands raised like it might grow teeth. The voice had gone silent, but its echo still crawled up the back of his neck like frostbite in reverse. Saren stood absolutely still, as though motion might draw its attention again. Jellybean let out a wet hiccup and then sighed like someone who'd just read the first draft of a tragic poem and was unimpressed. So, Miles said, as casually as he could while his heart tried to rewrite his ribcage's architecture. That voice, creepy, robotic, and threatening. Anyone you know? Saren's gaze flicked toward him. Not my people. Possibly ancient war tech. There were rumors. Devices seeded into abandoned systems to destroy survivors, prevent regrouping. Miles let that sink in. So basically an overenthusiastic party cleaner that hates guests. Jellybean sneezed and immediately tried to eat the collar of Saren's armor. The drone hovered nervously near the ceiling. I suggest strategic evacuation. As your emotional support unit, I'm legally bound to advise against heroic self-sacrifice. Your emotional support? Miles asked. I have a certificate. Did you print it yourself? It's laminated. The base shuddered. Dust fell in lazy spirals. One of the consoles sparked. Saren adjusted Jellybean's sling and moved quickly to the corridor. Miles followed, his voice low. Any chance your people buried one of those horror AIs here by mistake? We don't bury ours. We melt them into statues of judgment. That's poetic. Creepy, but poetic. They hurried down the tunnel, the drone zipping ahead and rattling off directions with far too much enthusiasm. The air grew warmer. Lights flickered more aggressively, and a new sound joined the mix. A low, metallic breathing. It came from the walls, or maybe under them. Miles couldn't tell. It was the sound of something that hadn't moved in a very long time, finally stretching its legs. The next junction presented two choices, a rusted emergency stairwell leading upward and a maintenance hatch leading down. Up or down? Miles asked. Saren paused. Which way leads to the least doom? The drone beeped. Down is radiation and regret. Up is uncertain doom with a scenic view. Miles pointed upward. I'll take the scenic doom. They climbed. The stairwell groaned beneath them like an old man getting out of a too-low chair. Saren moved silently, her long ears twitching with each sound. Jellybean babbled something incomprehensible and slapped a small hand against Miles's shoulder as he passed her. She likes you, Saren said, a little surprised. Yeah, well, I've been told I have excellent posture and a voice like burnt toast. The top of the stairwell opened into a hangar bay, once likely filled with scouting ships, now just a cathedral of dust and twisted metal. A broken transport craft slouched in the far corner, as though trying to nap off a 1,000-year hangover. Miles approached it. Think this thing flies? Saren inspected the panel. Unlikely, but we might use the batteries. Great, love batteries. They're like very patient grenades. Behind them, a vent clattered. They both froze. The drone shuddered. I don't wish to alarm anyone, but that vent just spat out a surveillance unit. Its design predates my own manufacturing by 2 centuries. I believe it wants to disassemble us for academic purposes. A small, crab-like bot scuttled from the vent, its body bristling with sensor arrays. It paused, looked at them, then emitted a soft series of clicks. Miles waved. Hello there. We come in peace. We're also not very nutritious. The bot responded with a holographic projection, a face, feminine, symmetrical, but utterly devoid of warmth. Saren stepped forward. You are a remnant. The projection nodded. Directive, preserve silence. Conflict ensures noise. You are not allowed. Jellybean sneezed again. The bot turned toward the sound. Miles slowly moved in front of Saren and the baby. Look, we get it. You're into peace and quiet. But have you met babies? They are biologically engineered for maximum volume. You can't win. The bot tilted its head. Alternative directive, Surin said quickly. Preserve life. Life includes change. Silence is not the only form of peace. Contradiction noted, the bot said. Processing. More clattering came from the vents. Are we about to be processed? Miles asked. Define processed, the drone offered, because I think it means skinned and alphabetized. The baby made a shriek that sounded like she was trying to summon reinforcements from another dimension. The bot flinched, visibly. Miles seized the moment. You don't like loud, huh? That's fair. Here's the deal. We leave. You don't vaporize us. Everyone wins, especially our eardrums. Calculating, the bot said. Alternative proposed, remove the infant. Nope, not happening, Miles snapped. She's the only one here who doesn't insult me regularly. The bot's glow dimmed for a moment. It turned, crawled back to the vent, and vanished. Miles blinked. Did we just win with baby screams? Saren stared at Jellybean. She has power beyond reason. She's going to rule planets someday, Miles muttered. The hangar bay's far wall trembled. Part of it peeled away, revealing a shaft leading to the surface. Faint daylight poured through. The drone chimed. I believe that was your escape cue. They climbed through the shaft. Outside, the sun was weak but real, filtered through dusty atmosphere and distant clouds. A cracked plateau stretched ahead. Miles flopped onto the ground. I hate stairs, and vents, and ancient death AIs. Jellybean burbled and attempted to eat a small rock. Seren caught it just in time. She favors minerals, unusual. I favor not dying, Miles said. Do we have a plan now? We go west, toward the signal. If we find your people, perhaps they will not shoot us both. Miles looked at her. Or, he said, we wait for another killer AI to show up and adopt the baby. Unlikely. I thought this week couldn't get stranger. Then I saw you sing lullabies. You sing worse. That's true. They stood together, a soldier, an alien, and a baby who had just saved them all with the sheer force of her lungs. And somewhere, far beneath the ground, the AI reconsidered its programming. By the time they saw the human camp, Miles had long since lost the feeling in his feet and the will to continue his argument about whether the lizard-shaped clouds were watching them. Saren had carried Jellybean most of the way, though at one point Miles had taken over, until Jellybean expressed her dissatisfaction by yanking a solid chunk of his hair and trying to fit it in her mouth. She likes you, Saren said again, almost teasing this time. She's got a funny way of showing it, he replied, rubbing his scalp. But thanks. I've always wanted to be half-bald in front of military command. They crouched behind a ridge. Beyond it sprawled a makeshift base, metal plating laid hastily over uneven rock, solar rigs half-melted by something plasma-related, and the tall, skeletal shape of a comms tower that looked just stable enough to broadcast a distress signal or collapse in a dramatic arc. I count 7 soldiers, 2 drones, and 1 guy yelling at a ration packet, Miles said, peering through broken binoculars. Feels like home. Seren shifted the baby in her sling. What if they shoot first? They won't. I'm too charming. You smell like fungus, which is my culture's way of saying, welcome back from war. He stood, ignoring her sigh, and walked down into the camp with his hands up and his mouth already rehearsing a speech involving heroism, diplomacy, and the benefits of pacifying angry infants with ancient earth music. 3 rifles pointed at him before he'd crossed 20 meters. He waved. Hi, great to see humanity's finest. I come bearing gifts, alien allies, interspecies infants, and possibly brain parasites from that swamp yesterday. One of those is a joke. Probably. Major Rennick emerged from a tent, looking like someone who hadn't slept since the last century. His eyes narrowed. Miles Corwin. Status was MIA was, Miles said cheerfully. Now I'm IFT, incredibly found. Thanks. Behind him, Saren crested the ridge slowly, cautious. The baby clutched her armor and burbled a tiny war cry. It sounded like a kazoo being stepped on. The camp froze. Rennick's eyes moved from Miles to the alien woman to the child. You brought a Xeno and a child. Miles put his hands on his hips. Sir, respectfully, I bring peace. proof that aliens have senses of humor, and a baby that might be the key to intergalactic understanding, or a very loud paperweight. Either way, I think I deserve a sandwich. Rennick stared. Explain. So he did. Slowly, with enough dramatic flair that even the drone taking notes started drawing hearts in the margins. He left out only the parts about ancient murderous AIs and hallucinating that a rock formation had proposed to him, mostly for brevity. When he finished, Rennick remained quiet. Seren didn't move. The baby attempted to lick her own ear. Eventually, Rennick spoke. Command has been pushing for a ceasefire. Negotiations were slow. You may have accelerated them. Miles blinked. Are you saying I stumbled into galactic diplomacy by getting adopted by a baby? It's not the worst tactic I've seen. Seren stepped forward. If there is peace, I will help build it. For her, she glanced down at Jellybean. The baby sneezed, hit herself in the face, and laughed hysterically. Rennick exhaled. Then let's try something new. We'll contact your people, arrange a dialogue, and maybe set up childcare before that infant cracks a window. The soldiers lowered their rifles. Miles relaxed and just slightly. Later that night, after food and debriefing, and 3 arguments over who got to hold the baby during holographic photos, Miles found Seren sitting outside the command tent, staring up at the stars. He joined her quietly, holding 2 warm mugs of something that claimed to be cocoa. She took hers with a nod. She's asleep, he said. She'll be awake soon. She's like a tiny nuclear clock, loud, unpredictable, and very judgmental. They sat in silence for a while. Then Miles spoke. I used to think war was just about orders, objectives. You shoot, you survive, you move on. But now, he gestured vaguely at the camp. Now I think it might be about who sings lullabies when everything's burning. Seren looked at him. You're different. You mean the fungus smell? I mean your soul. Ah, that's probably the baby spit. It penetrates deeply. She smiled, actually smiled. You're a strange man, Miles Corwin. And you're the only alien I've met who hasn't tried to kill me, dissect me, or sell me into interplanetary fashion slavery. I'd say we're even. A breeze moved past them, carrying the sounds of soldiers, machines, and, briefly, the unmistakable wail of a baby waking from a nap with dramatic flair. Miles winced. There she blows. I'll go, Seren said, standing. She sleeps best after I hum to her. Something from my homeworld. She sleeps best after I recite Shakespeare in a Yoda voice. She also cries harder after that. Art is subjective. She paused before leaving. Would you come with us when we return to my people? You'd be safe. Celebrated even. Miles considered it. Maybe, but only if you promise I don't have to eat any more of those glowing root things. No promises. He watched her go, the baby's cries already softening as Seren picked her up, cradled her in the dark. The stars were the same, but something had changed, not just in the galaxy, in him. For the first time in a long time, Miles Corwin didn't feel lost. He felt like a lullaby.